In 2016, The Crown premiered on Netflix, and at the time it was one of the most expensive productions that the United States-based streaming service had ever created. There was some controversy with the fact that if the show were to be considered a failure, it would be the most expensive disaster in the streaming service's history, but the gamble paid off and was a monumental success. The first season was critical to introducing a tone of seriousness and depth with the plot and characters associated with the series. Critics and viewers remarked at how skillful the writing for the episodes were and how the characters brought the vision of the show to life. In the first season, one of the most talked about characters was that of Winston Churchill's secretarial assistant Venetia Scott, played by Kate Phillips. According to popular opinion and later facts, her character was one of the most popular in the first season, and during the critical first few episodes of the series needed to build and maintain a viewership base. The episodes that featured Venetia Scott had her as a young aide to the experienced Churchill, and added a depth of humility to Churchill that had him as a sort of mentor to Venetia. This was very important to bring about to audiences because it softened the image of Churchill as a stoic individual whom supported colonialism and empire, from the Queen herself, to the Duke Philip, to Prime Minister Churchill. All of these iconic historical figures were somewhat hard to grasp or identify with, and Venetia Scott helped to bridge the gap between what was possible and what wasn't possible. The character, as mentioned, became popular with viewers due to these very facts. So in Season 1, Episode 4, Act of God, during the Great London Fog of 1952, Venetia is killed off quite graphically in the episode as being hit by a double-decker bus while navigating the barely visible London streets to Downing Street to help Churchill. Her death in this series was the only on-screen death in such a manner within the entire series. As critics later mentioned that such an eyebrow-raising death scene was also done with generating controversy in mind to gather more viewers and a reputation for the series, and at the same time display the tone of the series being that of serious, unmature, or even graphic. Due to the sudden death of Venetia Scott, a clearly devastated Churchill later visits her body and pays respects to her. It helps Winston Churchill in the series to make an impassioned speech to the people of London against the smog and pollution in the city. Soon after the episode was seen, a good number of viewers actually searched through online mediums to see if in fact Churchill's assistant did die in such tragic circumstances in the 1952 smog. But most were astonished to learn that the character was imaginary, a piece of fiction written into the series to give depth to characters as mentioned, and also to add more emotion to the 1952 smog incident, which wasn't actually that quite political in real life, but became heavily emotional in the series due to Venetia Scott's death. The character of Venetia Scott was one of the few in the entire series of The Crown to be completely fictional. All screenwriters later mentioned that Venetia was a reference to multiple real-life people that served in Winston Churchill's cabinet at the time in British politics. What's equally shocking is that in the episodes that featured Venetia, she actually had relatives that she helped care for and related with, but with her death the situation with them were never resolved or even mentioned again. Some critics have mentioned that although Venetia Scott was an original character concept for the show, all plot holes with the character should have been resolved instead of discreetly forgotten or ignored. Sometimes a character can be forgotten because they were fictional, yet most believe them to be real.